guys, and welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula One. The checkered flag has fallen on the Canadian Grand Prix, and what could be said, it was a race weekend full of unluckiness for teams and drivers. The wet qualifying session, the VSCs, the safety car as well at the end, all led to a bit of a mixed up result and teams pitting just at the wrong time and costing themselves potential points. So we're going to delve into it now and see how I rate the drivers. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out of a maximum of 10 points based on their race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Keep a lookout for bonus points. They're sometimes on offer for someone that does something extra special during the race, and I do award minus points for those drivers that do something extra special for all the wrong reasons. So let's take a look at the scoreboard going into this race weekend. It's on the screen now for you. Take a look and have a look where your favourite driver is. Could you see him rising? Could you see him falling? It's a difficult one to rate this weekend, I must admit, with, like I said, the unluckiness of the safety cars and VSCs and the wet weather in qualifying as well. But we're going to try my best, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong as always. So let's kick things off with the race winner, of course, Max Verstappen, and this one's a nice, easy one to rate. He had the measure of everyone in every condition this weekend and really didn't make any mistakes. He didn't make one single mistake this weekend from what I could see. Practice, fine. Qualifying, fine. Race, fine. He just really had the measure of everyone in that Red Bull car. He did such a great job this weekend. He never let anything get in his way. You know, Sainz at the end there, putting pressure on him in the DRS zones after the final safety car period. He didn't even bother defending. He was like, I'm not defending fresh air. He's not going to get past me. And he didn't, you know, he didn't have this erraticness to him. It was all so composed, calm and collected. The only little radio message that he had was when he came out behind Hamilton after his second stop, wasn't it? And it's like, you could have let me clear him. And he's like, you didn't have the pace. It's like, oh, fair enough. That was a bit savage down the radio, but fair enough. But it cleared him within that lap anyway, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But that said, you know, flawless throughout the weekend. So for Max Verstappen, it's a full 10 points. And yeah, I can't give him anything else, can I? That was a perfect weekend. Next up is Carlos Sainz, and he was sort of the Lone Ranger for Ferrari this weekend, wasn't he? We had Leclerc starting at the back, of course, due to engine penalties, so it was Sainz's time to deliver this weekend, and this was probably his best shot in a long time at race victory. But he just fell short, After that final safety car period, he stayed within DRS, but that Ferrari just didn't have the straight line speed, even with DRS, to get around cars, did it? We saw Leclerc struggling with the likes of Ocon. Those pesky Alpines get in the way, don't they? But for Sainz, it was just a nice drive, wasn't it? He wasn't ever looking to threaten Max, even though he was within the DRS. Like I said, that's partly the car as well. I'm not blaming Sainz for that. But overall, it was just a solid weekend, and he needs this again after the dismal races he's been having with reliability and his own issues as well. So at least he didn't make a mistake, but it wasn't, I don't think Ferrari really wanted Sainz to finish second, did they? They needed him to win this weekend, and I'm sure Sainz would have wanted to win as well. So for that reason, it's going to be 8 points on the board to Carlos Sainz. I think it was a solid race weekend. I don't want to discredit him in any way, shape or form, but he just didn't look to have the overall pace, did he? And Ferrari, we've said it's one of the best cars, but clearly in overtaking form, it's not. But nonetheless, 8 points to Carlos Sainz, a solid race weekend, and some solid points for him and Ferrari on the board. Next up, and securing his second podium of the season, it is Lewis Hamilton. And this has been one of his best drives of the season. Let's not forget, though, that back made a miraculous recovery, didn't it, after the last race weekend? We've had the space of a week. Now, my dad suffers from back problems, and if he has a back issue, he's out for a good fortnight. And I know the physical fitness of these drivers isn't second to none, but the way he leapt out of that car after the podium, I'm like, oh, wow! It's like a resurrection of the dead. Fantastic. Whoa, I'm out. Oh, hang on. I've got a back problem. Remember that. Yeah, so for Lewis Hamilton, apart from that just making me laugh at the end, I was like, yeah, you were definitely playing up to the cameras last weekend. This weekend, Friday practice looked like he was going to be nowhere. He was trying experimental setups and he just didn't go. It neither worked. And he was saying the car was undrivable. Come qualifying, the wet weather conditions really helped out with mitigating the time advantage, of course, because wet times, sometimes, you know, advantages don't mean anything. It's down to pure driver. He did a cracking job there, qualifying 4th, I believe it was. And then in the race, Hamilton eventually got past Alonso. And that was that. You know, he was 3rd and that's where he stayed. So a solid drive once again by the Mercedes. Just staying where it belongs. It didn't do anything fancy to get there. It just did it well because there were no mistakes, no errors, no strategy problems. It was perfect across the board from both team and driver. So for Lewis Hamilton, it's going to be a solid 9 points on the board. Great result, great effort. Great qualifying, great race, and the only reason I'm knocking that point off is because of him leaping out like a gazelle after he had a back issue just 1 week earlier. As much as I know he's playing up to the cameras and he wants FIA to sort something out on all the other cars to equal his performance, I thought that was a bit naughty, but you know, I've let other things slide, but I am just knocking a point off for that, although I did find it funny, and I don't criticise him for that. I think I've criticised other drivers for a lot less in the past. So yeah, him leaping out after almost needing a wheelchair 1 week earlier. Yeah, it's kind of Tale of Two Fortunes, isn't it? So yeah, a solid 9 points to Lewis Hamilton. Next up is George of the Russell. Watch out for that top 5, and here he is finishing P4. A great effort. Do you know what? I don't blame George for trying the slicks at the end there in Q3, because if that had worked, he'd have been a hero and he'd have been on pole. And it was probably the best chance to get pole. Had he not, where would he have been? 4th, 3rd. So it'd have been a really good qualifying, but at the same time, what's the point in 3rd or 4th if you're in that kind of zone anyway, and that's sort of where you're going to finish? He risked it. It didn't work out, but I don't blame him for trying it. In the race itself, it was a really, really good race by George. He made headway through the field. He made up 2 places on the start, didn't he? Certainly within the early laps. And then as K-Mag pitted for the wing, he got himself up to 5th. Alonso electing not to do any kind of strategy really, well the team didn't, elevated him up to 4th, and that's where he stayed. After that safety car period though, towards the end, it is worth mentioning that on the restart everyone was thinking, oh, there's going to be a really big battle between Mercedes here, George and Hamilton going to be going at it on same fresh tyres, and it didn't happen, did it? Hamilton stayed really well with the lead pack there, and George just kind of dropped off. I think he was knowing that the Alpines weren't going to keep up as well. So I think there are a little bit of element of team games there, not team orders as such, though. I think George was quite happy with 4th. Of course, I'm sure he would have loved that podium, but at the end of the day, the team comes first, doesn't it? And I'm not saying it with team orders because we didn't hear anything of the sorts, but I don't think George had the pace to overtake his teammate anyway. And he thought, I'll just drop back by a couple of seconds, make sure I'm not in dirty air, and just keep it, bring it home in P4. And that's what he did. So for George Russell, it's going to be a solid 8 points this weekend. Great result. Certainly P8 to P4, one of the highest climbers of the weekend. And did it all on pure pace and strategy. So fair play to Mercedes and to George for that. Yeah, just didn't quite have the measure of his teammate this race weekend. But that's to be expected when you're down the order after trying something special in qualifying. It didn't work, but there we go. One of those things, a learning curve for George, but at the end of the day, we don't blame him, and here he is still finishing in that top 5. So congrats, George. 8 points to you. And then we come to Shalala in his way all the way up to P5 from the back of the grid. And what could be said for Charles's race? It was so difficult, wasn't it? So difficult. He made really good headway at the start and then got himself on the fringes of the top 10, didn't he? And then he got stuck behind the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Was it Ocon or was it Alonso? Because Alonso didn't pit either, did it? Oh. Do you know what? This is the trouble with the Alpines. They're both just... Do you make anyone think there was 4,000 of the bloody things? Everyone gets stuck behind an Alpine during the race. And you're like, where the friggin' hell's that one come from? I'm stuck behind that one. I'm stuck behind that one. Like, oh my God. So I'm gonna say it was Ocon, but I'm doubting myself. I'm sure it was Ocon. I'm gonna stick with Ocon. But again, the Alpines just hold everyone up. It got stuck behind him for lap after lap, though, didn't it? And that really cost him a potential podium this weekend. But having said that, the safety car period played into Charles's hands, because without that final safety car, he would have probably been about 9th or 10th, wouldn't he? It wasn't going great, guns. And after that pit stop, he was like 12th, 13th. So it was a difficult one. So in some respects, the safety car saved him. But had he got past Ocon and then the safety car happened, we could have been on for a potential podium for Charles this weekend. So it's a tale of two fortunes of what could have been, and if it had just got past that pesky Alpine, then he could have been on for a podium with how the race panned out. But there we go, that's racing. So for Shalala, it's going to be a solid 7 on the board. And yeah, very harsh. I know it's very harsh. But at the end of the day, I've got to be cruel to be kind on this series. And, you know, he should have got his elbows out a little bit more. He's losing the championship hand over fist now with reliability issues. Max has taken another 15 points out of him, or did he get fastest lap as well? So it could be 16. Or did Sainz get it? I don't know. I can't remember who got fastest lap. But either way, it's a heavy chunk of points that have gone begging once again for Shalala. And if it had just got round that Alpine, I don't know what else you can do. Just nudge him. The front wings seem to be quite robust these days, so just nudge him, move past him. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but there we go. Thankfully, that's final safety car. Netted him a P5, but overall wasn't that great. So yeah, 7 points to Shalala. And then we come to Esteban Ocon finishing in P6. A great drive by Esteban. Played really well, played a great team game with his teammate, staying within the DRS zone or allowing Alonso to stay within the DRS at the final stages there. So it formed a DRS train and no one could get past the Alpines at the end there. So that was really nice to see. A great team strategy. Ocon finishing ahead of Alonso, though, considering where they were. It was unbelievable to say, isn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. But this is racing. This is how the virtual safety cars and safety car played out. And Ocon, in the end, got ahead. It was crazy to say, but that's how it happens. So for Esteban Ocon, after a solid qualifying, but nothing as special compared to Alonso, and in the race, worked his way up due to strategy, did a solid job at helping his teammate out at the end there to keep that DRS train going so no one could overtake the pair of them. Going to be a solid 9 points. Solid 9 points to Esteban Ocon there. I think he drove a good team game. He didn't look like that impressive during the race, did he? But to hold Charles back for the length he did has to be noted. And the way he played the team game as well. So fantastic stuff to Esteban Ocon. 9 points to you. And as mentioned, the Alpine pairing coming thick and fast here. In 7th place it is Fernando Alonso. The first of probably the really frustrated drivers. Oh, my heart bled for him. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't stop him during that second VSC. Alonso's race all unravelled there. That second virtual safety car period. Get him in! Get him in, for God's sake. Get him pitted, but they didn't do that. And then it looked like they were racing Charles, which was fair enough. There was a big gap there. And then when the final safety car came out, he just bunched all the field up. And in the end, he ended up behind his teammate. And it was just all a bit of a mess strategy-wise, wasn't it? And I don't blame Alonso for that at all. He drove really well. He drove the best job he could. He had some great battles. He did everything he needed to do this weekend. And in the end, the strategy just ended him up in B7. And that's a big disappointment. So, for Fernando Alonso, it's going to be 10 points on the Cruel Room. A very generous 10. I don't think he did anything wrong. The car wasn't capable of a podium. I certainly don't think it ever was. Unless it was absolutely throwing it down again in the race, I don't think there'd have been any chance of a podium. But there should have at least been from that P2 position and the strategy they were on. If they'd have pitted him under that second virtual safety car, I think he could have been 5th and not 7th. So, yeah, lost points there, and it was all down to strategy. So, yeah, a sympathetic full 10 points to Fernando Alonso. I don't think he did anything wrong and did the best job he could for the team, but the team let him down. So there we go. 10 points to Fernando Alonso. Next up is Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, and nice to see him back in the points after a pointless Baku. But what could be said this weekend? Zhou looked to have the measure of him once again, and it's a bit like the Ocon-Alonso battle there, where the driver that finished behind actually did a better job, if that makes sense. Zhou finishing behind Bottas, of course. Bottas qualified P11, didn't make it into Q3 again, which was a big shame. It looked like they could have both been in qualifying at one stage, didn't it, into the Q3. But nonetheless, here he is picking up 8 points and an invisible drive, really, by Bottas. He just kind of worked his way up there, and no one really paid any attention to what these kind of cars were doing. He got caught up in the Alpine train of DRS at the end and couldn't make a move, despite trying several attempts. Didn't work out. And that was that. So yeah, for Valtteri Bottas finishing here in P8, it's going to be 8 points on the board to him. I think it was a solid drive, but Zhou seemed to have the better race this weekend, but strategy put him ahead. And yeah, I don't reward people for strategising the way ahead. I do it on pure pace. And Bottas was nowhere this weekend, really, to the point we didn't see much of him. So yeah, and should he have got an Alpine? Maybe. But as mentioned, that DRS train is so difficult to get past cars once everyone's in it. So yeah, a solid 8 points to Valtteri Bottas. And then we come to Zhou Guanyu, a fantastic effort. It was so good to see. I was cheering him on all weekend. He drove so well. He was inside the top 10 throughout the entirety of that race, pretty much. Maybe dropping down to about 11th or 12th with strategy. I can't quite remember where it worked out for Zhou. But here he is, P9, a stunning effort and a stunning weekend. A stunning weekend. Borderline faultless by Zhou. He did everything that he could do, and this compounds the fact that he was really good at Azerbaijan as well. He looked like he could have been a point scorer there, but a mechanical issue. Here this weekend, into Q3, staying inside the top 10, picking up a couple of points, and in theory better than Bottas this weekend, but finishes 1 place behind him. So for Guanyu Zhou, it's going to be a solid 9 points on the board. Well done, Zhou. I am so happy for you. You did a really good job. I'm thrilled to see how well you've done. So congratulations, Zhou. 9 points on the board, and 2 points to your championship campaign. And last of the point scorers, it is Lance Stroll, and I don't know really what to do with Stroll, because he deserved that point. You know, that point now has put Aston Martin ahead of Haas, and he didn't really do anything wrong, but it was strategy, wasn't it, that got him there, as opposed to overall pace. And that's the team game sometimes, you know, but sometimes I want to see you work in harmony. I want the car, you know, to be okay. The driver has to be really good. The team have to have a fantastic strategy on top of that. And Vettel, I think, in theory, deserved the points more than Stroll, but the way the strategy went, here's Stroll picking up a point and Seb's P nowhere. So a big shame in that sense. But again, just there in the lucky moments, in the right window to pit, and there you go. Stroll is never, you know, he's never my favourite driver anyway, by any stretch of the imagination. And he scored a point. You know, it's a crucial point to their campaign. He's the one that scored it. It's a solid 7. And yeah, I don't know. It looked like Vettel had the pace for him all this weekend, but in the end didn't get there at the finish line, did he? So yeah, there we go. Solid 7-2 Lance Stroll. I think the strategy helped him score that point more than his own ability. Next up is Daniel Ricciardo, and these McLarens. Wow, we had slow pit stops, we had everything. Bad strategy, slow pit stops, a car that wasn't really that great either. Compounds the fact that here he is finishing P11 and outside the points. Oh, dismal. Absolutely dismal. It is ridiculous. It's like the bipolar McLaren. I'm sorry to say it, but it really is. They're either really doing really well or really shite, and this is another one of them really shite ones. It's back to like Bahrain at the start of the year, isn't it, for them? They're just nowhere. Yeah, the pit stops were shy, and it's going to be a middle of the road 5 to Danny Rick, because I tried looking at where it all went wrong for McLaren, and it was just the pit stops, the strategy, and that wasn't the driver's fault. And like, I don't know what more I could do there, because the cars weren't looking like they were going to score anything better than like 8th or 9th anyway, and I thought, well, that's not that impressive. So there we go, middle of the road 5 to Danny Rick. Yeah, I can only really give that based on the fact that the car didn't have the pace anyway, and even when it did, they screwed up with the strategies, and it just all a mess. So middle of the road 5, let's get it over and done with. Come on, McLaren, come back stronger for Silverstone, because that was a bit of a crap weekend, wasn't it? Then we come to Sebastian Vettel, one of the unlucky drivers once again. All these drivers outside the points really could have scored points this weekend had it gone right for them with the way the virtual safety cars played out. And as mentioned, Vettel, I think he had the measure of his teammate, but in the end he didn't score the points, did he? He stayed out, he didn't pit during the last safety car period, and he was 8th, and then obviously with old tyres compared to new, tumbled down the order, and here he is finishing in 12th. Unfortunate, really unfortunate for Seb, and I'm going to score him 6. I'm going to score him 6, and you know, I've just sang his praises when I was talking about Stroll, but yeah, you know what? I think Seb deserves more than that from me. I really do. But at the end of the day, I've got to go with the person that scores the points. He didn't, but it was the strategy that let him down this weekend. But I don't want to criticise Seb in any way. I think he drove really well this weekend. Certainly deserved the points more than Stroll, but you've got to finish, haven't you? And he finished 12th. So there we go. Cruel to be kind once again. 6 points to Sebastian Vettel. Next up is Alex Albon. Oh no, Alex. Oh. Do you know what? The weird thing is, my intuition played a part in all of that as well, and I do have to apologise to Alex, because when he came in for his pit stop, I thought, ooh, what happens if there's another safety car now and he's just come in? And then what happens literally as he exits the pits? Mick breaks down. And there we go. He had a virtual safety car and he could have had a free pit stop and he was running around in 10th. Oh, I blame myself for that one. I really do. I'm sorry, Alex. I literally thought that as he came in. I thought, oh, don't be a safety car now, or something like that that's going to interfere with his race. And he came out. He had the VSC. I couldn't believe it. I was literally just thinking it as it happened. I'm like, oh my God. Like, so unlucky. So unlucky, and that really put pay to his race. He was down in like 17th, 18th, and he was that far away. Down with the likes of Gasly and Latifi, who'd, well, I mean Latifi, but yeah, you know, Gasly had pitted as well. Really lost out. In fact, he was behind K-Mag, wasn't he, who came in for the wing. That's how drastically wrong it went for him pitting where he did. Big shame. So for Alexander Albon, it's going to be 7.5 points. I think he drove a solid race this weekend. Qualifying so close to getting into Q3 as well. 700ths of a second away, or something like that anyway. It certainly was close to getting into Q3. And he deserved a point, and he deserved that little bit of luck just for them to go, yeah, stay out one more lap, then VSC, free pit stop. He could have been a point scorer this weekend, so big shame for Alexander Albon, but a great drive, and good to see him after these last couple of races weren't really going his way, were they? This one was an encouraging boost to be disappointed with a P13 finish. So yeah, there we go. Alexander Albon, 7.5 points on the Cruel Room. And next up is Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri, and what could be said for Pierre? Oh, it was a bit of a nothing weekend, wasn't it, for the AlphaTauri team? The strategy wasn't there, the pace of the car wasn't there, and neither of them were really doing that well, were they? So, yeah, I mean, definitely there could have been potential points there had something played out differently. I think everyone, as mentioned, could have had points this weekend, but didn't work out, did it? It was just a bit of a nothing weekend by AlphaTauri again, and after the encouragement of Azerbaijan, it's gone begging again. It's gone like, where the hell have you been again? Like, just missing, just totally missing, nowhere to be seen. Big shame. So for Pierre Gasly, it's going to be 4 points on the Cruel Room. It was a disappointing qualifying, it was a disappointing race weekend, and you know, as mentioned, anyone could have scored points this weekend, but even then I think it would have been a stretch for the AlphaTauri squad. And Gasly, from the highs of last weekend to the lows of this, 4 points on the Cruel Room. And then we come to Lando Norris. Stop right now, thank you very much. We forgot to put your tyres on. Oh, Lando. Oh, Lando. Oh, Lando in Florida. Oh, what a shame. What a shame for Lando Norris. Yeah, they elected to double stack. Ricciardo had a slow stop, and then Lando got stuck behind, and then they didn't even have his tyres out. And they didn't know what tyres they were putting on. Hards, mediums, hards. I don't know. Equated to a 27-second pit stop, and that was him out of the race. He didn't have a chance, did he? So, like Ricciardo, with his bad pit stops and bad strategy and everything, Lando's going to get a middle of the row 5. I've got to keep the McLarens fair there, because that was more of a team error this weekend as opposed to driver errors. All just a bit disappointing in the end, wasn't it? Big disappointing weekend for McLaren, and it was the team more than the drivers this weekend, unfortunately. So yeah, Lando Norris, 5 points on the Cruel Room. Disastrous. Let's come back stronger for Silverstone. And then we come to Nicholas Latifi, and what is it going to be? 1 point. 1 point to Nicholas Latifi this weekend. Yeah, it was shy, wasn't it? It was miles off the pace in every session when it was wet, and then in the race he was lonely, and then he can't even have fast pit stops. He just has a pit stop in keeping with his own pace, and Williams were like, yeah, 5 seconds, 6 seconds. That's about right. So yeah, they did that for Nicholas Latifi just to keep on pace with himself, and was in the end a lonely P16. So, you know, every virtual safety car period, it never played into Nicholas Latifi's hands because he was already miles at the back anyway. So yeah, 1 point to Nicholas Latifi. It's not a Palmer because someone else deserves it a lot more than he does this weekend, and we'll come to him shortly. But yeah, 1 point to Nicholas Latifi. And then we come to Kevin Magnussen. Oh, the last of the runners, but it could have been so much more. Should have been so much more as well, I'd like to add. It's the middle of the row 5. It all went wrong, didn't it, when he had that front wing? It was just like that, wasn't it? And they give him a black and orange flag. Must change the wing. It wasn't the swiftest of front wing pit stops either. It can normally be done in about 12 seconds. Has took 17. I admit it's not something that they regularly plan for, but they do train for it. But it was a slow stop nonetheless. And either way, he was going to be at the back, and at the back he was. They elected not to pit him during that final safety car period because he was 12th, and they were kind of hoping maybe some chaos could happen ahead and he'd get into the points that way. As it was, unfortunately, those old tyres did not last, and he ended up tumbling down to being the last of the finishers. Big shame. Started 5th, qualified 5th, and here he is finishing down in 17th place. I don't know what Haas have to do. I really don't, because when they're in the chance of points or something better than what they end up with, it just all goes wrong, doesn't it? So there we go. Middle of the row 5 to Kevin Magnussen. Gutted. I was gutted then. Then we come to the first of the retirements on this list, the last retirement in the race, of course, and it is Yuki Tsunoda.
During the summer months, I work at a garden centre. It's going really well. I've only killed 300 plants, fell into a pond and knocked down an old lady with a ride-on lawnmower. Employee of the month is mine for the taking. Get in.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but he deserved a Palmer there. He just stuffed it into the wall coming out the pits. Oh God, Yuki. We have these highs and lows from you, and this is another low, isn't it? I thought his wheel had come off. I genuinely thought they've not put the wheel on right. He's come out of the pits. His wheel's come off or detached slightly. He couldn't turn and hit the wall. Then we watched the replay. He's like, wah. Didn't have a clue, did he? He was like, didn't bother using the brakes and came out far too fast. I don't know what he was playing at there. So yeah, stuffed it into the wall, damaged his AlphaTauri, retired from the race. Palmer of the week for that one. Yeah, that was silly. Silly error, that. That was a very big rookie error, that. And we're 1.5 seasons into your Formula 1 campaign, so you're really not allowed to make mistakes like that ever, let alone now. So, yeah, Yuki Tsunoda on the fringes of the points, wasn't he? He was around 11th, 12th before that pit stop. We don't know what he'd have done in the race because, of course, had he not crashed, that safety car wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, you know, Palmer of the week 2, Yuki Tsunoda. And then we come to Mick Schumacher. Oh no. Again, what is it with Haas? Oh. Qualifying 6th. Tumbled down to 8th. Fair enough, you know. One of those things. Racing. Wanted to consolidate his points, I'm sure. And then breakdown. Something went wrong there, didn't it? And retired from the race whilst running around in 8th. So we got K-Mag sent to the back as a result of having to pit for a wing. And now we've got Mick Schumacher retiring from the race. It just all unravelled for Haas, didn't it? After 5th and 6th, I mean, at the very least you'd expect them 9th and 10th, wouldn't you? You know, you'd expect both cars in the points from that position. But in the end it was nil point. And a big shame for Mick. I hope this is a confidence boost to him though, because the last few races he has been terrible with accidents and just lack of pace. But this weekend was certainly more encouraging. What would have happened? We don't know. We don't know what would have happened in the race, of course, with Mick still in it. But it's a middle of the road 5 points, which is the maximum I give any retirement, as you were all aware, except for Guan Yu Zhou last weekend, because he definitely deserves some more. But yeah, middle of the road 5 points to Nick, the maximum I can score any retired driver, really. Big shame. But yeah, hopefully an encouraging boost to his his confidence, and hopefully something will come of what happened this weekend, and he will finally secure some World Championship points somehow, somewhere. Fingers crossed, Mick. I was really starting to doubt you, and I'm still on the fence, but this was an encouraging sign that you've got pace once again. So middle of row 5 to Mick Schumacher. And then last on this list, the first of the retirements in the race, it's Sergio Perez, Checo. Race weekend to forget, I'm afraid. He crashed in qualifying, which put him down in 13th, 14th, somewhere around there, wasn't it? And then in the race, he was clawing his way through. He was on the cusp of the top 10. And his gearbox gave out by the sounds of things. It just went, whir, whir, and just like not finding a gear. And that was that. So, big shame for Sergio. We were just saying, we could be a championship contender. And this weekend, you look at what Max did, you look at what Perez did. Perez maybe would have only ended up 3rd at the best. Maybe 4th even. You don't know how it would have all played out, of course. But in the end, it was just a disappointing race weekend overall for Sergio. And out of the maximum 5 I can score a retirement, it's going to be 3 points on the board to Checo, because I have to mark him down for that qualifying crash. And the fact as well to mention, he didn't look to have the pace anyway in that qualifying session, dare I say. He only just scraped through Q1, didn't he? So, yeah, big shame to Checo, to his campaign, to Red Bull. Overall, a weekend to forget. But fingers crossed he can come back stronger in Silverstone, and we can see him fighting for podiums and maybe a win again as well. Let's wait and see. So there we have it, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Canadian Grand Prix Crawl Room. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high, any too low? As always, the scoreboard is on the screen now. Take a look and see how these race weekend scores affect that scoreboard. Who's gone up? Who's gone down? Is there any with a clear lead now? It's all hotting up in the mid-pack especially. There's a lot of people tied on points. It's going to be a frantic end to the season, I'm sure. There's a lot of drivers, I'm sure, now watching this Crawl Room video and seeing this scoreboard and thinking, I really need to get my act together now. I need to give myself a really good race weekend so I can get up that championship order, because I might not be fighting for the real life championship, but anyone can fight for the Crawl Room Championship, and that is what it's all about. As always, a massive thanks go out to Dan of Mushy Gaming for his fantastic scoreboard, as can be seen on the screen. Without him, this series would be more pointless than it already is, and who can forget Dave, F1 Games PlayStation, for providing me with the Jolie and Palmer skits that you all know and love. So I'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time, guys, for the Silverstone Grand Prix, my home race. Really looking forward to it. I'll be watching, as always, with eager anticipation to see how the Brits get on, of course, and to see how the race weekend pans out, because Silverstone often provides something special. Will tyre start exploding again? Who knows? Who knows? It's overdue though, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time. Leave your thoughts and feedback down below, and much love.